Thank you all for joining today. I'm really excited about this panel discussion. This is the second in the Comms and AI webinar series that I'm doing, and really excited to have some brilliant panelists with us today. It's a bit of a happy accident that this is another all-women panel, which I'm personally thrilled with. So I'm really excited to have Ginnia and Emma here today with us. So just a little bit of framing before we get started. I really chose this topic based on some feedback from all of you that this would be helpful, and also because I think right now for comms leaders and particularly agency leadership, this is really a moment in comms where we have an opportunity to stop and reflect, consider why we do the things we do, and think about, is there a better way? I really think, and the three of us were talking about this the other day, it's an opportunity for us to take a step back, think about the problems that we're trying to solve, the pain points we're facing, and consider how AI can help us solve those and alleviate some of that friction. And so I'm really interested in thinking through how AI can improve quality of life for agency owners, how it can be a partner for us, and then also how it can impact and improve the client experience as well. So I want to encourage you all to submit questions throughout this session in the Q&A feature, and certainly throw your thoughts in the chat throughout, and we'll get to Q&A at the end. And really just excited to have you all here today. So with that, I will pass it over to our lovely panelists, and I'm just going to ask them to tell us a little bit about themselves and their background and how they think about AI for agencies. So, Ginnia, we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ginnia. So I've actually worked in PR, specifically in tech PR, for almost 15 years now. I'm a little bit older than I look, but I have been on both sides of the fence. So I've been in boutique agencies, also worked at large agencies like Edelman, and I've also been in-house at places like Google. And over the past few years, I started specializing in emerging tech, so like AI, quantum, all that stuff. And last year, I joined a boutique AI consultancy called Enigma, where we help PR and marketing agencies roll out AI. And it was amazing to kind of see firsthand, especially kind of last year, where everybody was just getting their head into what AI is, how it can help within comms. But I actually missed the buzz of PR. So now I actually split my time half doing hands-on comms work freelance and half helping agencies get AI ready with Enigma. So that's me.
Great, thank you. So glad to have you, Ginnia. And Emma, what about you?
Oh, thanks. It's great to be here with you guys. So I am co-founder of Spark AI. We're an AI consultancy and we work with creative agencies. My background is I am a graphic designer. I ran an employer branding agency before Spark, and I also spent 15 years working in government, bizarrely, at the Cabinet Office here in the UK and at Parliament, working on future of work policy, and AI is the future of work right now. So it sort of dovetails across everything. So I've got a really deep understanding of creative teams and also kind of culture change and ways of working changes. And at Spark, we run training, workshops, strategy sessions with agencies. We really focus on agency leadership and helping them navigate this period of time and this transition. Yeah, so my mission really is to help businesses innovate with AI and be really empowered by it and not be overwhelmed. And I think that's probably a lot of what we're going to talk about here.
Great. Well, thank you both. And Emma, I hadn't told you this yet, but Spark AI to me is so clearly, the branding is so clearly kind of made by someone who's been steeped in design for a long time. So that really comes through in the branding. So I love that. Thank you both. Really just glad to have you both here. So let's hop right in. So talking about expectations versus reality, right? I talk to so many agency founders who come back from these great communications conferences and they feel a little bit overwhelmed by some of the AI hype and the fact that everyone's talking about AI, but they're trying to grapple with how do we use it, right? How do we benefit from it? So I'm curious to hear from you both. What are agencies expecting AI to do from your perspective, and what's actually possible right now?
Really great question. Shall I have a go first, Ginnia? I hear two things, I guess. I think on the one hand, many agencies I talk to, or agency people at all levels in agencies actually, can expect AI can be magical. It's going to instantly give a right solution to something. It's going to be enormously time saving. It's going to kind of give instant copy. It's going to do all that stuff. But at the same time, there's an expectation that therefore it's going to take people's jobs, I guess. So it's this kind of two things at the same time. But the reality really is that it's a collaborator on your job, in your role. It doesn't replace human judgment at all. That's still essential. And someone if is great at their job, they're going to be great using AI and even better. So yeah, I think that's where I want to start. Ginnia, do you hear similar?
Yeah, no, exactly. People come to us thinking that AI is a silver bullet that's going to fix all these problems, but those problems will still exist once you plug AI into a broken process or a messy workflow. It's not going to suddenly fix that workflow. So there's thinking behind it before just jumping the gun and rolling out some tools. And a strange reality is sometimes immediately after embracing AI, quality of output can sometimes drop, not because the tool is bad, but maybe the process hasn't been clarified. And even with training, people get excited or they get complacent, or junior teams might feel confused about how to use it. And so there's like this immediate output drop in quality. So it's really important to have the processes in place and do a bit of thinking around things before just jumping the gun and buying a tool or immediately rolling out a tool across everything.
Yeah, I see exactly the same thing. I think taking that really structured approach towards AI and not just seeing it as a few tools are going to sort of plug a few gaps or there just might be a nice layer on top of things. Actually think of it as a very structured process and culture change piece. It's much broader than a new shiny tool. It's to make the most of it and for it to really add value to your agency.
Yeah, I love that. And that really gets at the theme of the conversation today and takes us into the next question, which is related, right? It's, why is culture the real challenge instead of tech? I mean, how should agency leadership show up in these conversations around how to navigate these changes? Like I said at the top, I like to think about what problems can we solve first instead of what tools can we use. So how do you think about that? How do you think about, the culture and the importance of getting that right versus the tools and the technology?
Yeah, I think we like to think about it as AI as an advantage rather than a shortcut. I think culturally, a lot of people immediately jump to thinking that AI rollout can replace things or make you do things faster, or you just sort of shortcut the work. But the best teams and the best collaboration with AI is if you think about AI as an advantage. So, how can you assist yourself in being better? And that, I think, is actually the most difficult culture shift because we are so used to tech doing stuff for us before AI, right? Like we have, especially in comms, just a variety of tools that do all the things for us. Whereas AI is slightly different to, your media monitoring software because it can assist you to be better at what you're already good at. So it's that mindset shift of still recognizing your human strengths and finding ways to make those better. And that I think is actually quite a new thing that we're having to get to grips with. But I think Emma, you do more work with culture change, don't you? Like,
Well, yeah, but I love that AI thinking of it as an advantage. That's brilliant. I'm gonna use that, but reference you, Ginnia. That was fantastic. Yeah, I mean the tech bit is the easy bit. There are loads of really brilliant AI tools. Kind of doesn't really matter which ones you choose. There are some not to choose, but culture is the hard part, and like culture is the hard part in any change, any business change. It's no different with AI, and I think in this situation, that's because if we as leaders don't give our teams kind of clear direction, which I think because we don't think of AI as a culture change program initially, it can fall into the trap of not doing that. So without giving clear sort of direction and setting a clear strategy for AI in the business, then team members kind of have like a fear of getting it wrong. Like maybe they shouldn't be using this or don't know. They don't know what parameters they're working within. And there's also the existential fears of, job losses if that hasn't been alleviated by talking about AI more. And people, always are fearing looking silly in some way or not being able to admit that a colleague knows more about how to use AI than they do, or stuff like that. So I think leadership, how they need to show up really is just setting the tone of the AI conversations. Leaders themselves need to use AI and understand it. And then with the whole agency, there needs to be open, curious, supportive conversations. And the leadership team together need to really map out what AI means for their business and how it can enable their existing strategy. I don't believe in like having an AI strategy. I kind of believe in working out how AI supports the business to grow. And there might be in new ways that weren't possible before. And then I guess creating a safe, psychologically safe space for the whole team to like test and learn, giving people the time, which is really hard in the agency environment, giving people the time to experiment and giving them the permission to kind of spend that time experimenting. I think, yeah, that would be my core advice.
Definitely. And just one other point on culture is I think AI has come at a time when especially agency life is already facing a cultural change. We used to be all in the office. We used to train our junior staff like face to face and mentoring and all that kind of stuff. And now all our ways of working have changed slightly, even how we communicate with clients, or we use Slack instead of calls or stuff like that. So there's this whole other layer now that on top of all those changes, we're trying to get to terms with how we're, working overall. And so I think, yeah, it just requires a bit more kind of thinking about how we as an agency want to work overall, and maybe starting from the ground up.
Totally. I have a few thoughts based on what you all just shared. One is I'm reminded of the first webinar series we had in this panel around ethics, and a PR agency founder, Courtney Glimpf, she mentioned the concern about the kind of workforce pipeline in an agency specifically. And, you're hiring on these entry-level PR professionals and making sure that you're still giving them the kind of fundamentals and the foundational training that they need in order to take over Courtney's position. She mentioned like, I'd like to retire at some point, in 20 years or whatever, and making sure that the people, who are entering the workforce now are set up to be able to do that, are able to think strategically in a way that, people are who have been building these skills for decades at this point. So I think that is really an important thing to be thinking about. And, I certainly don't have all the answers there, but it's a worthwhile conversation, right? The other thing I would say about tools is before we opened the webinar up to the attendees, we were talking about which note takers we use, right? And we use 3 different tools, but the idea is they have some differences, sure, but the idea is we've found that it's useful to record and transcribe our meetings, right? And so that's a great example of thinking about what problem needs to be solved, and then whichever tool you use within reason is going to be fine, right, and can solve that problem. And also around change, I mean, I am really interested in the change management piece for comms leaders around how we adopt AI responsibly and can support our teams as we navigate through this change. I mean, for a lot of people, hearing artificial intelligence can emotionally kind of trigger some people, right? And that's okay. And I think it's important to talk about that and to normalize it. Some people feel threatened by it, intimidated, overwhelmed, excited. And that's okay, but we should be talking about that, and comms leaders need to be aware of that and acknowledge it, right? In order to successfully lead teams. Great. So moving on to kind of the competitive edge. I'm curious from you all what it looks like when agencies use AI to truly have a competitive edge instead of just as a time saver. And I've said this before, and I'm sure I've said it to you all, is I'm really interested in how AI can improve our quality of life as comms leaders and not just make us more productive and more efficient. And I think that is really a worthwhile conversation about how can we use it to take some of the stuff off our plates that we don't love to do. So curious to hear from you all how agencies can use AI as a competitive edge.
I'm happy to go, Ginnia. I think that productivity thing is really interesting. Just I guess as an aside, is that I think because AI has been talked about so much in terms of productivity, it's actually turning some people off from using AI because some of us value our self-worth is based on how productive we are, I guess. And interestingly, it's often more women that's the case for. There's been a study recently about it. So anyway, just an aside, I think that's a sort of interesting aspect to it. But what I find is that I feel like most agencies start by asking the wrong questions about AI. I'm often asked like, what can AI do? And like, what can it do for me? But actually, I think the real question is like, what can like now I do with now AI is here?
Yeah.
Like, and I think it's that AI, it comes back to that AI advantage thing, um, which is the innovation piece. So yeah, it's not about working faster. Yeah, there's some things you can do faster, but that's not the important part about AI. It's about like how can we design new services with AI? How can we now it's here, what can we do? And that is the question to keep asking like time and time again. It's not like a one-time question to ask ourselves. So yeah, it's like new services, it's better insights, it's unique client experiences. It's like across every area of an agency. I'm happy to share some examples of kind of what pioneering agencies are doing, but Ginnia, would you like? Yeah.
Yeah. I think one thing that we noticed working with mid-sized agencies, especially, is like you get this dichotomy of you have the junior staff that are very AI forward. So they're using the tools every day, they're confident in using the tool and being on it. And then you have the more senior staff, I'm not talking about age, but just kind of like progress in career, who are maybe a little bit more reluctant to use the tools or even leadership. Like one client we had, the CEO himself said, I want, you guys to come in and train my staff, but I won't use it. And obviously we had to persuade him to. But I think the real superpower is then lost, because the superpower with AI, especially in our world where our ranks or whatever you want to call it are quite defined, it's when you put the senior minds with the tools, then it becomes a competitive edge, because what you need to know what good looks like in order to know how to use AI. If you don't know what good looks like, you're not really going to have any kind of competitive edge with AI. So it's actually the agencies who continue to train their staff the way that we always have, like that double down on old school agency craft, that continue with the really, getting the newspaper, recognizing stories, all that kind of stuff. Those are going to be the agencies that fly past the ones that maybe like ditch training and go straight to like, right, let's, just give our junior staff AI and let them run with it. Because like I don't know how realistic that is long term, because I think our business model will shift, but right now we're not there yet. And I think that agencies that skip all that are going to lose out. And it would be also a shame for our whole industry to lose out, right? Because we need to teach our junior members of our community how to do a good job. Otherwise it's just going to progressively get a little bit worse. But so I think the real superpower is knowing what good looks like. That's what we need to focus on, and then the AI is just an addition to that, is my opinion.
Yeah, and Emma, I want to hear your examples. I want to hop in and say, not to be too self-referential here, but in that ethics panel that we had, Rebecca Boltzma, who's an AI ethicist, she talked about how, there's this idea around ethics and how to responsibly use AI that there's one approach that focuses on, the worst case scenario. And she actually encouraged people to think about the best case scenario and use that as a North Star and kind of a guide to what's possible. What is the best case scenario? And I thought that was a really interesting way of thinking about it. And what you said, Ginny, reminded me of that. So, Emma, I'd love to hear the examples you mentioned.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of thinking about it. I think yeah, so agents, so like common themes I guess I'm seeing is totally all the stuff that Ginnia said. And like just building on that, how agencies are really sort of getting a, I guess, a competitive edge using AI and thriving are those that are really training everyone, irrespective, it's like all levels, but it's actually all roles in an agency. Everyone from the like accounts payable team through to the creatives, to the strategists, to the client services, because actually one of like another of the superpowers of AI is in that collaboration between teams and the kind of handoffs between teams in the creative process start to evolve as well. So if you're training everyone very independently, you're only augmenting like individuals to do their jobs. You're not actually getting that sort of bigger win, which is how everyone works together as a team. So that's what I'm really seeing. And I think there's also sort of thinking outside of training, some other traits that I'm seeing are that agencies are being like really transparent with their clients and the client conversations. I think we'll probably touch on that later. Um, they're also like I mentioned earlier about giving team members like space to experiment, like kind of a sandbox type environment, and really learning from that. So sharing the learnings from it, understanding what the wins were, what the limitations were, and sort of putting real time and effort aside to look at that. And they're also really thinking, we were talking earlier about career development and ensuring there's a pipeline of talent and how we ensure that people have the craft skills as well as the AI skills. And I'm sort of seeing this sort of really forward-thinking agencies really thinking very hard about that and maybe don't have the answer yet, but know that the model that we have had needs to change. And if we don't like proactively, cognizantly like change it in the right way, we might find ourselves in a difficult situation in a few years' time. Um, yeah, so that's kind of what I'm seeing.
I would also add to that, I think if you are small, medium, even large size agency, I would say don't get distracted by the fact that, you know, these global conglomerate agencies are releasing tools left, right, and center, AI powered tools, all this kind of stuff. It might be a slight competitive edge in how they sell their product, but I don't think that's a reflection of a competitive edge of whether the quality of the work is any better or not, because you're not seeing the uptake of the tools, you're not seeing how, you know, people feel about them within the agency, you're not seeing the results of the work. So don't get distracted by that and think I need to do that too in order to compete with them, because I don't think that is a natural reflection of the true value that AI can bring. So
Completely. Like we have the same access to tools that networked agencies are spending 300 million on for £20 a month. And they're the kind of the small and medium-sized agencies are way more agile to respond and change, innovate with our services. So yeah, there's a huge advantage there.
And it is a good reminder of what I see as a false sense of urgency. You know, I think a lot of people, including myself, sometimes feel behind in these conversations and in these processes. And I think, in fact, just the fact that people are on this webinar and engaging in these conversations, we're actually ahead, even if it feels like we're not sometimes. And so reminding ourselves of that, taking a step back and again, really leading with intention and what problems you can solve, I think is a really good way to think about it. Great. Thank you both for that. That was really enlightening. Thinking about then more practical matters for agencies, from your perspectives, how is AI changing how we think about pricing, packaging our services, and the value that clients perceive and expect? I've talked to some founders and they say, you know, should we worry that our clients will expect to be paying us less for work when we're using AI because it takes less of our time? So anyway, thinking about pricing, packaging, and how clients kind of perceive the value agencies provide.
I think this is such an interesting topic. And the interesting thing about meeting with agencies who want to roll out AI is a lot of the times the first meeting is almost like therapy, because they're just talking about all the problems that they had. And this is like such an existential moment for comms and for agencies, because we're not actually just thinking about pricing. It makes you question what it is we're actually selling. What are people paying us for? Is it us? Is it the output we deliver? Is it the strategy advice? We need to get really brutally clear with ourselves, like, what is our USP? are you a creative whiz? Are you an execution, or is it your relationships that clients value? And I think nobody has the answers right now to what the pricing structure is going to be in the future. But I think if you're very confident on your USPs, then other things are going to fall into place. And yes, some clients might expect cheaper, but they're only going to expect cheaper on certain things, because I think if you're confident enough in what you're selling, you can even experiment with premium packages, because the truth is human plus AI is more, it should be more expensive, it should be more valuable, because what you're outputting is better, it's faster, it's better quality. So I'm not sure that, it really depends on what you're offering, but if you have that clarity, then it will make more sense how you price, how you structure your products. And yeah.
In getting away from this idea, I do this in my own work, getting away from this idea that we're charging only for our time, instead of the value we're adding and the value we're delivering to clients. And that really is aligned with how you're framing that. Emma, what about you? How do you think about it?
Yeah, I'd only build on that. Sorry, not getting much debate in this webinar because we're agreeing with each other all the time. But no, I completely agree, and I think it's there isn't like a one answer to this at all, because it completely depends on your agency's positioning, your services, and exactly what Ginnia was saying. But I think it is going to make value time-based charging challenging, and I think that's where understanding your value is really important, like Ginnia was saying, and understanding what value-based pricing means for you and your agency. I think there's kind of also a role of, if you're innovating with different services, because AI is here in the world now, that means there are new services we can innovate with. There will be different ways to charge for those services that might be, you don't need to design them on the same basis as we've designed what we do now. There's ways to be imaginative. And I think secondly, AI does the cliche, but it frees up time to be more strategic and to do that higher value thinking, which is the stuff that we're expert in and the stuff that people are paying us for. So focusing more on that higher end is also a place to think about as well, rather than focusing on the things that AI is really good at.
Yeah, in that vein of I love that, thinking through fundamentally what value do we bring to the table, and really, really trusting in that and getting clear on it, maybe writing it down so you're reminded of it regularly. I think that's really useful. Great. All right, so we just talked about pricing and packages. Let's move on to talking to clients about AI. That's another kind of challenge that I hear from agency founders. So, what do you all say to agency leaders who are worried or trying to navigate how they disclose the use of AI to clients? And how do you all think about how we can build trust while still with our clients and with our peers while still benefiting from these tools?
I always, I guess, talk to clients. There's two core things conversations I often have around this, and it's firstly, like, on just take time to understand your client's attitude towards AI, and all your clients will have a different attitude, and sort of understand where they are on that spectrum of risk averseness to wanting to lean on you as an agency to really innovate, because perhaps they can't so much if they're in a larger business or a corporate or in a regulated industry or something like that. So I think that's one thing. And it's actually, it's a brilliant reason for client services to reach out and have interesting conversations. It's a good excuse. And then secondly, clients tend to care more about results rather than cheapness. I guess there's a nice quote by Ted Sarandos, the chief exec of Netflix, I think. He said that people don't want films that are 50% cheaper. They want films that are 10% better.
Mm.
And I think it's a really nice thing for us to keep in mind. I think we get paranoid that people are worried about price when actually they're worried about quality and effectiveness. Yeah. So I think the key message really is just be really transparent with how you're using AI and understand where your client is on that spectrum of kind of risk to innovation around AI, and help them. Everyone's going to move along it eventually towards the innovation side. Different industries will move at different rates, and sort of have confident conversations to be able to to lead the conversation in that. But that starts with being able to get confident around AI yourself first, and then you can have those conversations really well.
So that's exactly what I was going to say. I think no. Like we get that question a lot, but it's actually, I don't think it's an AI question. It's a relationship question, right? But exactly what you're saying, it feels like an AI question because most people don't have a clear internal position on AI yet. So once you have a clear, confident idea internally, then that's going to make a conversation much easier because you'll be confident. And I don't think it's any different to, you tailor your conversations with different clients about bad results or a team member leaving, or I don't think it's any different to any of those conversations. So everything you've said.
And I think it helps just to have like a clear position as an agency as to how you use AI and what your approach is. And that's as important for your team as it is for the client conversations. It's just a really nice thing. It's a really easy way to start with those conversations and something to point to.
Yeah, and to one of your points earlier, Ginnia, it's the therapy meeting that you have, the kickoff call kind of with the client. It's meeting them where they're at. Emma, you mentioned that too. It's, being very aware and asking some of those questions to understand where the client is at so that you can speak their language around it and you can tailor how you're explaining and how you're framing maybe your products or services or perspectives on AI in a way that they understand. I think that's all really brilliant guidance.
But I do think, like with the tools question, I do think you also need to have, especially the agency leadership, a very clear idea of the questions that you'll get asked by the clients on tools like security, data storage. Where has the tool that you've chosen, how's that, where is that data being stored in the US and in Europe? Like those little questions might not seem important, but I think if you are going all in, I think you definitely need to have those answers before you have the conversations with clients as well, because they might ask. So
totally. All right, let's see here. So if a founder wanted to start using AI tomorrow, really intentionally, right? They probably already use it, maybe without even knowing, but really intentionally, like I want to embrace AI for my work. Where should they begin? And should the upskilling and training occur before a strategy is in place, during or after? I know we have maybe some different thoughts around what an AI strategy is. Is it necessary? But where should they begin and when should the upskilling occur? Emma, I know that's something that you work on a lot. So what do you think of that?
Yeah, I guess I have first-hand experience because actually we've tried doing this in multiple different ways to see what works. So I can tell you what works is that some upskilling to start is really important. And generally we train teams rather than individuals. But so I guess I'm answering this from that perspective. But so we would do like a half-day upskilling with everyone, with the whole agency if that's possible. That firstly, it's not just learning how to use AI. That's the important thing. It's like actually understanding what AI is and what it isn't and therefore kind of how it works. So you can make informed decisions about where to use it and where not to. But I think that sort of fundamental understanding of AI and then some skills training to learn how to work with it. And it's really easy to think that many of the AI tools work like Google, because I know Google is integrating AI now in Google search, but like it used to be, because it just, looks the same. So you kind of ask it a question and you wouldn't naturally think, oh, this is my collaborator, but actually just giving that upfront training on working with AI as a collaborator rather than a piece of software, I guess. And then I would do the strategy bit with the leadership team after that. So, which means the leadership team then understand the opportunities and risks with AI for the agency. They can overlay that on who they are as an agency and who their clients are and what the unique aspects of it are for them. And then once that strategy piece is nailed down and all the things Ginnia was talking about in the last question, then I would go into like deeper training with the team after that. So there is a bit of a sequence of events, and I found that's what really works.
Great. How do you think about it, Ginnia?
Yeah, I completely agree. Upskilling should come first. And yeah, you can't build a meaningful strategy if nobody knows what to do with things. But the next phase, I guess, after what Emma was talking about, in terms of actually tactical, where do we begin? I think there's two schools of thought. Do you start with the start with where you're already strong, or do you start with your true pain points where, like, let's say maybe you have continuous client feedback that you're not creative enough, or your teams are struggling to get coverage, or you're not winning new business. So I think some people can jump straight into being like, right, that's our problem, we're going to use AI, we're going to solve that. But there is a strong case of starting where you are already strong, because you already know what good looks like. It's kind of safer. Like, there's not going to be as much quality drop because you are already doing that thing well. And it builds momentum because the team's going to be a bit more excited to use it to do something that you're already kind of good at as an agency. The only downside is people, when they invest in AI, they want to see strong ROI. They want to prove, okay, we've improved something we were bad at by five times. If you're using AI to help you where you're already good, your gains are going to be marginal, but the gains are maybe things you can't measure: team enjoyment, all those kinds of things, team embedding AI into their day-to-day work processes. So I am quite a proponent of starting where you're already strong, and then maybe you can build in the stuff that you're not as good at, but then your team will already be more confident in using it to help you where you're less strong.
Yeah, and what a great reminder to start measuring what you can early. I mean, I tell comms leaders that all the time with any of their work, right? I find that often we don't always have the outcomes and the quantifiable data that we need when we need it, right? Like, how can I show that I made a real impact? And I think that applies here as well. And starting early, even when numbers are maybe a bit lower, to show over time, then okay, this year we really kind of leaned into lean into how we use AI and embrace it, and what did that transformation look like? What were the outcomes of that? So I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, I love the idea of, well, the importance of measuring the non-financial outcomes as well, particularly team happiness and seeing the impact on staff's or survey results and that kind of thing. Could I just
Yeah.
add one more bit of very tactical advice on this
Mm.
question? So if I was a founder and wanted to start using AI tomorrow, I think we touched on it earlier, but there's like I have, and I'm sure all three of us have, like massive FOMO when so many tools are being released all the time, and you just can't get across them all. And you think that sounds like it can fix my problem. That one can too. That, oh my God, what do I do? But I guess the thing is, just don't get overwhelmed by the tools and just pick three. I would say like a meeting note taker, just introducing a meeting note taker and being able to analyze all your meetings and treating that as data is a big win. So get a meeting note taker, use a large language model like ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever your native platform is, and an image generator, which now could be it could be ChatGPT now as well, or Gemini, but just use those to begin with. Don't get distracted by all the noise.
Yeah, I love those practical tips. That's great. Kind of choosing three and seeing where that takes you. All right, let's see. I have a question I want to pose to you all, or a statement, and I want you all to react to it. So tell me if you all agree or disagree with this. And it's AI can do creative work. So AI can do creative work. Do you agree or disagree with that at this moment, with where we're at now with AI? And then how do you see AI acting as a partner in our creative ideation and strategy? So can it be creative? And then maybe if so, how can it support our own creativity?
Going
Um,
first. I'm sorry.
I'm sure everybody on this call, not just us, has opinions on this. But I think, actually, funnily enough, technically, people always say that, how AI hallucinates, which is often cited as a negative. That's the hallucinations are what can create creativity within AI outputs. So the random ideas and all that kind of stuff, the hallucinations like help with that. I think AI, as with any other kind of work, the best way to use AI is to amplify what you already have. So if you are already a creative person, it's going to make you even more creative. But if you aren't necessarily a creative person, I think you just have to learn the tools and the prompts that will help you get closer to ideas that, I guess, getting down to tactics, like just simply like headlines. I will not write a single byline or press release without typing in my personal favorite version of the headline that I've come up with, and then asking ChatGPT to come up with like 10 different options based, from traditional to crazy, and just seeing what it comes up with. And then I will pick the best bits from all the 10 different options. And then that's going to be the most creative output. And that's the same for any campaign idea or anything that you're working on. Having that partner will just make what you're doing a bit more creative. But like asking it to come up with something from scratch is like just gambling, like just throwing something into the wind. So technically it's creative, I guess, because it's coming up with it. But yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. Like, yeah, don't just ask it something randomly. You have to give it a brief. And I kind of had worked with a similar framework, Ginnia. Like, I kind of have this think framework where you like think for yourself, come up with your best ideas, give it your best ideas, but prompt it really well. And then, so I think my answer to your kind of provocation, Natalie, is like, yes, it can do creative work with you, and it expands your creative work. It comes up with all those, it bashes together ideas that you might not have bashed together before. And then it's your job to then hone it back down again and work out what's right. So yeah, it's a thinking partner, like a brainstorming partner. It's amazing for mood boards, idea generation, writing loads of variants, expanding on your variants. But you still need to give it very clear direction.
There's like my favorite AI influencer, Ali Miller. If you follow her on LinkedIn, she has tons of really good creative prompts that help you, whether you want to do a campaign idea or just like her prompts let you generate a range of ideas that really are a range, as opposed to sometimes you'll just quickly write a prompt and the ideas are sort of quite similar. She has quite a good list of like things that really will help you get that range. I guess it's similar to like how we do brainstorms anyway. Like one of my old bosses, his favorite exercise to do before we started brainstorm is like ideas to get you fired. So we would do like a quick round of ideas to get you fired for, the campaign we were working on, and then jump into the actual brainstorming. But that helped us with creativity as well. So yeah, same with ChatGPT, I think. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
That's fascinating. I think we'll hop right into Q&A. We're getting some that are coming through. So if anyone else has any questions, feel free to submit them in the Q&A feature and we can hop right into that. Also on the point about prompting, I've put together a couple of resources for strategic communications that are prompt packs, and I've really tried to be very thoughtful with those, building out extremely specific and robust prompts. And so as we're in the Q&A, I'll put those in the chat for people to access. So yeah, a few questions here. Let's see. So Chris Hobson is asking, I'm interested to know if the panelists have gotten any pushback from clients about using any particular AI platforms that might not license the data on which they're trained. And how have you all navigated those questions? He says, for instance, I know that Google Gemini licenses their training data, at least they used to. Do y'all have any thoughts on that? Has that come up in your conversations?
Comes up all the time. Copyright and IP issues. Yeah. And the agency worlds, of course. Yeah. I mean, most of the AI tools have been trained on unlicensed data. It's only Firefly and Getty. Yeah. I was just reading Chris's question. I didn't know that about Gemini, but I'll look into it. But I think if you're using one of those AI tools to create something, you're not breaking copyright by using the tool. They've already broken the copyright. But all the normal rules of copyright still apply to you that they would if you were using an AI tool or you were commissioning an illustrator or you were designing something by hand. It's no different, I guess. So I often get this question in terms of people generating imagery or copy that's like in the likeness of something else, I guess. And yeah, and then normal copyright applies there. So yeah, it's a tricky area to navigate at the moment because like the legal landscape is very varied around the world about copyright. So US is got a position now. UK doesn't. It's just done a consultation, and we're in a kind of they got way more responses to the consultation than they thought. So it's going to take them a very long time to work through the responses from many agencies, I think. So yeah, it's different in different territories.
Yeah, it does come up a lot, usually just as a talking point as opposed to clients pushing back, because what we found is people don't know the right question to ask. Actually, they don't actually know the laws or the truth, so they're just sort of like throwing it out there. It mostly comes up in campaigns where if somebody wants to, I don't know, use a celebrity voice, or generate some text in the style of David Attenborough or whatever, and then that's where those types of things come up. But one touch point that people sometimes realize too late is looking at your client contracts. So sometimes in the initial client contract, there might be things in there that are either about where your data is stored or about IP or, all that kind of stuff. That's where the real issue lies. Like in the conversation, that will just go wherever. But if you have very particular stringent contracts with your clients, then just double check that, because that's where the real questions will lie with this stuff.
Definitely, yeah. On the different sort of policy and legal landscape around the world, last week actually published just a update on what is the different policy in each territory. So I'm really happy to share a link to that afterwards.
That sounds great. That sounds great. Going back to the conversation around how we talk to clients about this work, do you all think that the use of AI should be part of the initial pitching conversation with a client? I'm sure it maybe depends on the context, but how do you all think about that?
Yeah, I think it should be a proactive conversation at pitching stage. Yeah. Absolutely. I think it would be strange not for it not to be now.
Because I think, every industry is going through the same thing. Like every other vertical is going to be having these webinars. They're also figuring out in their own worlds how to use it. And so, most in-house teams will also be having these exact same. So I do think like there is an advantage in being open and transparent about where you're at in your journey. And that will sometimes generate a more authentic conversation. So I think we can rest easy, almost be confident in the fact that everybody's going through this right now. And we are not alone. We're not the only industry that is suffering these questions. So yeah.
That's a great reminder. And it's cool because comms is across industries, right? And so we can ask, we can ask friends, we can ask peers, former colleagues across industries, across departments, even as agency founders, a lot of these principles apply across the board, I think. So that's a really good reminder. Great. We had a question from Brad. So he said, what happens when all of our AI tools just talk to each other, like taking notes after this meeting and handling the follow-ups for us? Should we be building a comms AI avatar to work with other AIs? That's certainly where we're headed, right? What do you all, I mean, it's possible now. What do you all think about that?
Well, I think we should all be thinking about how we're going to innovate with our services. And I'm just looking at Brad's comment. He's building Brad GPT. Yeah, for sure. That's a great thing to do. But I think right now, like, if we took this meeting transcript and did an automatic follow-up, personally, I would still want a human in the loop at the different stages. Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet to not have that.
And that I think ties into that existential question as well. I think the CTO of OpenAI at Cannes last year, she said something quite controversial. She said, sure, AI is going to automate some stuff that creatives do. Those are going to be the things creatives shouldn't have been doing in the first place. So building tools that talk to each other about certain things. I think it's just down to us to choose whether or not that's something we want to do or that we think is valuable. If you don't think that that's valuable and you want to throw that to, even a junior team member or an AI tool, like that's still down to us to pick those things, I think, and subscribe value to them in our own.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Let's do the lightning round real quick. So, what's one mindset shift or final takeaway that you would want any agency founder or agency employee to walk away with today?
For me, it would be stop asking about what prompt to use or what tool to use and start thinking about your business model, how to build an AI forward culture, how to talk to clients, how to protect your value, all that stuff. What prompts and what tools can be quite easily fixed.
100% completely agree. And I think, the more I'm across both sides of the fence. I think maybe we should start thinking about how AI can turn your existing powers into superpowers. Like, if you are a successful PR person, in this world right now, like you already have the skills, you already have all the tools to be good. So, how can you just make whatever it is that you bring even better rather than, get sucked into this world of like, what can AI replace? What can I get? What tools can I get to do this for me? Just like what I'm good at, how do I make this even better? And then I think that will answer a lot of questions about what tools to use, about, where to start, all that kind of stuff. Oh, I think Natalie, you're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. And for me, I think it's really getting clear on what value we offer and what are we really good at and how can AI help us be even better at that. Really leaning into our strengths and figuring out how can we elevate those even more with this mix of human and AI. So that's wonderful. Emma and Ginny, I want to thank you so much for being here today for this panel. This was super enlightening. And also to our audience, thanks for joining. Yeah, hope to see you all around LinkedIn soon. So thanks, everybody.